Mystical Ninja Starring Goemon is, without a shadow of a doubt, the game that I hold my nostalgic geekery for the most. This is mainly due to a few factors. 1. It's not exactly the most well-known N64 game. 2. My best friend introduced it to me when we were both kids. And 3. It's janky AF, but with so much more charm to boot. The main story has Goemon and friends traverse the entirety of Japan, or about as much as one could fit into a 32-bit N64 cartridge, to stop the Peach Mountain Shoguns from turning the country into their own personal stage. If that sounds a bit absurd, that's because it is. Mystical Ninja has a very goofy comedy anime type shtick going for it. I think just looking at the art direction should give away that much, well, with Goemon having a kabuki-style aesthetic and Ibisumaru looking like every cartoon burglar ever. The absurdity doesn't stop there, however. The main dungeons our team must traverse through are equally ridiculous. The first being a transformed version of the Lord's Castle. This seems normal enough until you encounter deadly dumplings of death. We're only getting started, BT dubs. The second castle is filled with haunted toys of death. It also features my least favorite room in the entire game, where you must leap across spinning tops while avoiding water that very quickly drains health. Fuck this room. The third castle is all about festivals. And tanks for some reason. And haunted samurai armor. Starting to think that some enemies were thought up in pre-pro and just scattered about because they didn't want to waste a good idea. This castle also features my second least favorite room due to the fact that platforming can be janky at times and unresponsive in others. Somehow I was able to complete it in my first attempt. I really don't know how. RN Jesus must have really liked me that day. The fourth castle is a submarine. Once again, everything seems normal enough until you notice a theme going on with it. That's right, it's a gourmet submarine, meaning food everywhere. These devs did not miss a single opportunity to make a food reference, and I personally thank them for it. It's also the only castle of the original 4 you can only visit once due to the baddies blowing it up after you finish it. Thankfully, there are no collectibles inside. Don't worry, we'll get to those soon enough. The fifth and final castle is split into 2 parts. The first part being a very traditional Edo-Japanese style feeling to it, while the second is just a mansion to showcase the baddie's wealth. It does, however, contain one of the best songs in the game. This would be a great time to talk about the fantastic arrangement of tunes Mystical Ninja has, so let's do that! A mixture of traditional and, at the time, contemporary music. Alone, this means nothing, but in execution creates one of the most memorable soundtracks I've ever heard in my life. Not only does each area have its own theme, but each castle has multiple versions with each new one building on the last, with my personal favorite being the Festival Temple. My favorite town theme, however, is easily Festival Village, which, by the way, is a criminally underused town. In fact, upon taking mental notes while playing the game, I noticed that the devs seem to only really like 2 out of the 4 main towns in the game. Oedo, the one you start at, and Zazen, the second one in the game. This is due to the fact that you visit these towns multiple times throughout the 4 to 6 hours you'll be playing this game. Festival and Pokebug villages, however, you'll just run straight through those. Just to put everything into perspective, I'm going to very briefly summarize the journey you take in this game. You go from Oedo to Mount Fuji to Oedo Castle, back to Oedo to Zazentown to Fogipo to Ghostway Castle entrance, back to Zazentown, back to Ghostway Castle, back to Zazentown to Festival Temple, back to Oedo to Festival Village, back to Mount Fuji, which might mean Oedo if you didn't stop by the coffee shop at the beginning to get fast travel checkpoints. Back to Festival, go to Mount Fear, to Festival, back to Festival, to the nearby waterfall, to Festival, to Gourmet Summary, back to Zazen, back to the Festival, then you go into space to the end of the game. Give me a moment. Whew. This means you'll be seeing Oedo Town 4 to 5 times per playthrough, Zazen 4 times, Festival technically 4 times, but it's all around the same time, and you're mostly just running from one exit to the other constantly, and only once for Fokipoke Village. Fuck, I feel bad for that town. Going back to the Festival Village part of the game, one of the other main problems with this section, as quickly noted, is that after reaching it, you have to go all the way back to where you started, thus making the journey you made feel kinda pointless. Good backtracking usually has you revisit older areas with new abilities, which is something Zazen does during the final visit to the town at least. Mount Fuji, however, is just Mount Fuji. Again. Why? I couldn't tell you. Narratively, I suppose it does make sense that the guy who gave you your chain pipe can also upgrade your weapons, but when you make us repeat a mini dungeon with no other new obstacles or enemies, it kind of feels like the weakest part of the game to me. One of the stronger areas of Mystical Ninja is the cast of characters. We've got our main boy and folk hero Ishiwaka Goemon, the always goofy sidekick Ibisumaru, the friggin' robot ninja Sasuke, and the secret ninja agent Yae. Each have their own quirks that get shown off during the game's dialogue, and for an N64 game, there's quite a lot of it. While having dialogue in and of itself wasn't unheard of on the N64, it was generally kept to a minimum to get to the gameplay as quickly as possible. There is definitely a good philosophy to be had there, but there's also nothing wrong with having characters speak throughout the adventure. Now, it's not like this is Metal Gear or anything, but when you remember that this game came out before Ocarina of Time, that should tell you about how risky a game like this was. Speaking of Zelda, Mystical Ninja also features its own collectible comparable to the heart pieces, Fortune Dolls! They are scattered all throughout the game, and finding 4 silver ones will refill your health and increase it by 1. Finding a rare golden doll will automatically accomplish that task. However, unlike Zelda, you do not find any dolls for simply defeating a boss, mainly because there isn't one for every castle. Sure, the first 3 have regular bosses, but that's it. Only 3 bosses in the entire game. Outside of that, there are 3 mech bosses to fight. The first one occurs between your trek from Oedo to Zazentown, and this is a huge wake-up call to new players. First off, excellent vocalized song from the legendary Ichiru Mizuki, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, and yes, I will play the sequence in full in 3, 2, 1, go! Then we get to another big surprise, an on-rails obstacle course. Man, Konami is way ahead of the game with these auto-runner sections. Anyways, the point is to destroy stuff to gain health and ammo for the fight. Now for the battle itself. The first one is up against the Kabuki robot, Kashiwagi, and as I previously noted, this can be a wake-up call to new players. There is no pausing first off, so if you need a moment to think, Too bad, because this guy is going to beat the fuck out of ya. The game doesn't even tell you the controls, so I hope you looked up how to do the special beam ahead of time. Aside from that, it isn't too bad, and that can also be said of the second mech fight as well, the charming mermaid Taisamba. This one is a two-parter. First one is on the surface of the water, then boom, she drags you under. This part can be a tad more challenging, but just stick and move and use that special beam and you'll be A-okay. The final boss, however, is a different story. So at the beginning of the game, you see a giant peach-shaped UFO terrorize your hometown. Guess what? Now it's time to kick its ass. You're constantly going around the different weapons, picking them off one by one before obliterating the center to finally bring this fucker down. This, however, is not the end. We must now fight the true final boss, and I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, TWK. And this motherfucker kicks my ass almost every time. Despite having the advantage early on, this heel bastard had to get all his shit in. No matter to me though, as I went into business for myself as well and took this shotgun jobber to Suplex City. Sorry, not sure where all those wrestling analogies came from, but if they made sense to you, then congrats! The last thing I want to bring up are the power-ups because they serve essentially as HMs before Pokemon was even a thing. Ibisamaru gains the ability to shrink down, which is unfortunately the least useful ability in the game due to how situational it is. Next is Goemon, who has sudden impact, aka the Please Don't Sue Us Toyama-san! This gives Goemon double the strength with half the defense, and the ability to move metal blocks. Following him is Yai, who can turn into a mermaid, which is only really used in the Gourmet Submarine, but it is useful to find a lot of the optional fortune dolls. And finally, Sasuke gets a friggin' jetpack. To say this breaks the platforming challenge is an absolute understatement, but I suppose that's why they saved it for last. In order to gain access to each power, you must first complete a minigame. These range from fun to, oh my god, please make it end! Ibusu has you rummaging through a cabinet for 8 randomly dropped sweets while avoiding enemies and being stealthily when the begin appears, lest you be bombarded with bombs. Goemon just throws boxes of Oyakatas to stop them from popping balloons, which, after looking it up, means a highly decorated and retired sumo wrestler. There are certainly a lot of these esteemed athletes impeding our progress. Then we get to Yai, where we have to mash the A button to win. It's really that simple. Then it's Sasuke's turn, and I gotta warn you for the swearing on this one, because I fucking hate this fucking minigame, because the fucking platforming isn't made to go around in a fucking circle. The fucking amount of fucking rage I feel every time I fucking replay this fucking section is unfucking believable. Fuck this fucking minigame. That is all. And speaking of that being all, folks, let's talk about this game's ending. After defeating the big bads, our heroes are met with fangirls of the villains. So that's gonna be a bad afternoon for them. And that's just how our fantastical adventure ends. Hooray! Despite having quite a few negative things to say, I still absolutely adore Mystical Ninja Starring Goemon. This has been and always will be one of my favorite games to play again and again and again and again. I'm also so happy that it's gained a cult following in the past decade. Hopefully, one day it can be ported to modern systems along with its sequel, Goemon's Great Adventure, which I should totally cover on this show sometime. Also, I'm not sure if I'm going to go this in-depth with every little thing I cover on this channel, but I felt like I had to with this game because when it comes to Mystical Ninja, I gotta talk about as much as I can. And I'm sure there's a lot of stuff I left out, but you know what? There's always follow-ups. Because I'm never going to be done talking about this game. Until this game gets ported to a modern console, I will never ever stop talking about this game. Anyways, as for what's next, well, I feel like relaxing, so how's the film sound?